Hello everyone and welcome to the Crumbs podcast,
where we pick up the pieces
of whatever's left behind. Did you see that glitch in the simulation? We switched roles.
I know, how odd.
It almost seems paranormal.
Ooh.
And speaking of the paranormal, I'm so excited about this podcast.
So am I.
We are going to be talking about the paranormal
and its activities.
But just a little disclaimer, it's not even really a disclaimer. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, just suspend your belief. And even if it's like vice versa, you really believe in the spiritual realm and you don't think science has an explanation for the paranormal, also suspend your beliefs because we are going to be talking about both the scientific and, would you say spiritual?
Yeah.
Theories that surround ghostly activity.
Yeah, we're going to try to explain things, even though some things can't really be explained. But, you know, we associate paranormal activity mostly with ghosts.
Yep, which begs the question, what are ghosts? You know, science is very powerful. It explains a lot of stuff, but there is a lot of stuff that it can't explain. And so when people see, hear, or believe something that is sometimes unexplainable, science finds itself trying to prove something that might not exist sometimes, which is sort of impossible. How do you prove something doesn't exist if it doesn't exist?
Yeah, that's true. We are going to be discussing paranormal phenomena and not just ghosts. Like when we talk about the paranormal, we usually associate it with like a sense presence or
creepy,
something like that, or a ghost. But you know, sometimes it could be telepathy or some kind of distortion, like physical time, like time travel or out-of-body experiences. The thing is, when we think about these things, they're usually associated with negative themes.
Yeah.
And there's always some kind of emphasis to death. You know, someone dying or someone's dead, or, you know, a dissolution of self, or you not being you anymore.
And experiences concerning death are usually reported at night, particularly between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., which is sort of the same time period where these like sensed presences, I guess you could say,
are more common, yeah. So that's really interesting because statistically, most people report ghosts from 2 to 4.
Yeah, and like 3 a.m. is known as like the devil's hour. Do you get what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's when like all the creepy stuff happens. And you know, it's important to know that paranormal beliefs and paranormal experiences are related. There is a strong like positive correlation between the proportion of paranormal experiences that people do report and their beliefs in the paranormal phenomena.
But I think like a lot of paranormal experiences like occur in certain places, or I should say specific places.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's certain places like a haunted house. That's why we have this idea of having haunted homes.
Yeah.
They're usually associated with like a sense presence, like feeling scared for no reason, like odd smells, ghosts. Sometimes we see like a shadow from the corner of our eye and we think, it's a ghost. And obviously like noises. You hear noise anywhere, like it could literally be your neighbor opening their gate and you think your house is haunted and there's a ghost.
Yeah, I think even people who might not believe in ghosts, I think even when you're scared, sometimes you're like, ooh, that's a ghost.
Yeah, what is that sound?
Yeah. It's really interesting because we're going to delve into this a bit more, but just to touch on this, continuous measurements within these sort of like haunted areas reveal bursts of low frequency magnetic fields, ultrasounds, and other like anomalies that can directly affect objects within the space as well as the human brain.
Wow.
Because like you mentioned, sometimes the source of this experience is not usually known to us, and we usually attribute them to like our cultural explanations of like demons, ghosts, even aliens. And usually it's the adverse experiences that lead people to believe that it is a ghost.
Yeah, you know, that's so interesting because when we think of ultrasound or magnetic fields, we don't actually think about it like affecting objects and causing them to move. But we all know like magnets attract certain objects, like metals, and they cause them to move. So it's not that big a deal when you think about it.
I would have to disagree. I think it's just as scary.
Yeah, but scientifically we all know magnetic fields move things. But when it comes to ghosts and you try to explain it using magnetic theory or gravity, people are like, no, it's not that. Yeah, speaking of like magnetic fields, there's this case study of like a 20-year-old woman, and she was referred to a psychiatrist psychiatrist because she's, you know, been seeing ghosts and she experienced a presence, and she actually felt this ghost stimulate her lady parts and uterus.
What?
I know. And to make this even scarier, she sensed like the outline of a baby over her left shoulder.
Wait a minute, how do you sense an outline of a baby? What does that even mean?
Maybe it was a small cat. Like, how do you know it's a baby? Maybe she wanted a baby. I don't know. She thought that she had been chosen for something and that she was the chosen one. But researchers and scientists interpreted these experiences as those that come from seizures.
Yeah.
And like specifically
like spasms.
Yes, spasms like within the temporal stem. And these seizures shed fibers from like the temporal corticals of the right hemisphere. So basically an activation of the right hemisphere of the brain.
Like you mentioned before, it doesn't help with the fact that she was experiencing this between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., you know, the ghostly period. And so she sort of interpreted this a little bit differently, that, you know, it was paranormal.
I think she interpreted it as in a religious context.
Yeah.
Like she was the chosen one.
Like the next Virgin Mary, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, probably.
But it is interesting to know what she was actually experiencing was, let's just backtrack for a bit. The girl, when she was a child, she sustained a left frontal injury as a child, but she'd been like quite quote unquote normal, because what is normal, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And, you know, really academic and doing well in school and stuff like that.
But when scientists actually measured around her bed, measured the pulsed magnetic fields around her bed, they were quite similar to what they actually make in labs. And then eventually they found out that the source was an electric clock, and she actually slept with this electric clock, you know,
like a few inches like away from her head when she would sleep.
Yeah.
And you know, this sort of intensity of like the magnetic field would be, like I said, really intense, and it would have been sufficient to suppress like melatonin levels, so it was hard for her to sleep, and it would evoke electrical seizures.
Yeah. I think sometimes science is scarier
Yes.
than, you know, beliefs that are not backed up by anything. That's just scary. That
is
magnetic
scary.
fields are able to do that.
Literally cause seizures. I honestly would rather have a ghost.
Yeah.
Just to touch on more about the like magnetic fields and stuff, this is, like I said, it's very scientific. There's actually a neuroscientist called Michael Persinger, I think that's how you say his name, studied the link between electromagnetic fields and the perception of ghosts. So this was like an actual study. And the way he studied this was that he made people wear a helmet and he emitted like low or very weak magnetic fields, and found that pulsed or like pulsing magnetic fields can actually make us feel like there is a presence in the room with you. I'm pretty sure we've all sort of experienced this, where like you could just be sitting and you're like, oh, I feel like there's someone watching me. It's most likely just magnetic fields messing with your brain. That is so creepy.
Yeah, like we mentioned before, because these magnetic fields cause like unusual activity in your brain. So whether you believe in ghosts or not, this is quite like a universal theory.
Yeah. Also a universal feeling. I'm pretty sure everyone has felt that way.
Yeah.
Like
that there's someone watching you.
Yeah. Ooh, and you know, to add to sort of the validity of this, other scientists have linked environments that sort of have this reputation of like, ooh, this creepy castle is haunted. And those sort of haunted places are registered to have like unusual magnetic fields.
Yeah, so that sense or that feeling is correlated with having abnormal magnetic fields in a particular area.
Which,
that's so interesting.
Just to add on like a little bit of a side note, it's sort of fascinating how usually when people talk about haunted places, people directly like discount certain people's experiences.
Yeah.
Like that definitely didn't happen. But you know, science is revealing that these situations do happen and they're able to prove it scientifically. Isn't that sort of fascinating?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it goes down to like needing an explanation.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things that we find to be impossible, we find them to be impossible because there's no possible explanation for them.
Yeah.
We don't actually go, or maybe I just don't have the knowledge. Like if I told you 200 years ago that you could be in two places at once, separated by thousands upon thousands of miles, you would have possibly believed that I was either irrational or crazy. But if I told you today that you can talk on a mobile phone and be like 1,000 miles away at the same time and still interact with people on a neurocognitive like level, as in I think I say, the other person thinks, they, you know, reply to me, you might actually think, well, this is boring because you know how phones work. Yeah, sometimes it's not that something is impossible, but perhaps we just don't have the knowledge to understand it. The difference between, for example, your response to the lady who sends the baby over her shoulder initially and later when we explain that it's just magnetic fields are completely different things.
Yeah. And back to sort of the woman that had this experience, patients who sustain brain trauma associated with like impacts of mechanical energy to their body or their brain, even without the loss of consciousness or like neurological conditions from their injuries, often reveal a loss of sense of self.
Yeah, that's true.
And so the majority of these patients, like I said, who have sustained these injuries, feel as if they are not the same people they were before the injury. And so they do experience an increased incidence of paranormal experiences. And these like feelings sort of include the presence of a sentient being. And the characteristics of most of these presences reflect the function of the right hemisphere. And like you mentioned in the story, she had early in her childhood some trauma to her right hemisphere.
And you know, we read a lot of articles and a lot of scientific articles, and what we thought was reoccurring was like the neuropsychological profiles of like these patients all had something to do with like enhanced activity with the right hemisphere.
Yeah.
The right hemisphere was always mentioned. There was always either an injury or whatever. The scary thing is the presence is not like, oh, I felt like someone's watching me, Big Brother's watching. It was like, it was so intense and real that the patients thought they are actually going crazy, to the point where they didn't even tell their families about this. And it's only after the experimenter predicted when and where the presence was that the patient actually admitted to this experience. So, you know, that's kind of interesting to think about, because, I mean, if my friend turned around and said, hey Nora, I felt a ghost yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be going, okay.
Yeah, and I also read up on the fact that sense presences attributed to the left side are usually considered to negative or like aversive sort of situations.
Yeah.
And so they are often so terrifying that the person is even reluctant to sleep because they're scared of this like dissolution of self and
these experiences.
Yeah. And sometimes it's so bad to the point where they feel like suicidal ideation.
That's intense. Like,
that is extremely intense.
To be so scared of something. But that's the thing, we fear what we don't know. A lot of researchers have shown, without like being judgmental or challenging the beliefs of the patient, that explaining the source of this sense presence or phenomena created like less fear, obviously, because they understand what it is now, and it reduces like these feelings of anxiety and stress that is associated with these experiences.
Yeah. Sort of the solutions, or like the traditional solutions for reducing or, you know, stopping the occurrences of these unwanted presences usually involve this procedure that do activate the left hemisphere. For example, people who, or like patients who like suddenly wake up and they feel this like presence, they can stop the experience by activating a tape that vocally specifies the time or generates like, you know, a reassuring statement. That was like sort of the traditional solution, but they're sort of shifting solutions into a way that's a little bit more productive. So what they usually do now is that they expose the patient to the same magnetic fields and, you know, feel the presence again. However, this time they're in a safe clinical setting, and it helps them realize that it's just a brain process that can be controlled. And I think for the most part, like this goes back to like psychology and stuff, and this is like a theory that I think about all the time. Like things like mental illnesses or trauma or stuff like that, I think a lot of it comes from, you know, this feeling of lack of control.
Yes, yeah.
And, you know, just telling them that there is a way you can sort of control this is probably so reassuring for them. Do you get what I mean?
But you know what it makes me think about? It makes me think, you know, are there actually people out there that do have like that sixth sense? I mean, the things that surprise us are often the things that we don't really want to believe in.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't surprise anyone that, you know, Michelangelo was a great painter, or that Einstein had this mathematical ability that went beyond the average person.
Yeah.
So is it really hard to believe that some paranormal experiences may not simply manifest the intrinsic noise like of the brain, but instead they may just be the detection of like stimuli or outside sources that the normal brain is oblivious to.
So sort of like how, you know, like you said, mathematical or creative intelligence, there's possibly some sort of like spiritual intelligence, would you say? Like psychics, like that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yes. I mean, it makes me question why we are not willing to believe that those kind of intelligences exist, or people are able to have those brain connections.
Because even on like a human level, like universally, we all, like, the idea of intuition kind of sounds paranormal if you explain it,
Yeah,
don't
like
you think?
based on your gut feeling. Well, there's actually a scientific explanation for
Oh,
that.
really?
But, you know, for the sake of the argument.
Oh, is it a psychology explanation?
No,
Please
it's
let me know.
actually like biochemistry.
No way.
Yes. Chemicals in your body change, and that's why you feel like you have butterflies in your stomach, or
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, which sort of leads us to a little case study. So Sean Harry Banst, he's this middle-aged man who sustained at least 2 brain traumas as a child and as an adolescent. And several neuropsychological assessments indicated that he displays deficits for tasks that typically involve the right, you know, regions of the brain. And, you know, Sean Harry Banst states that he perceives quick images, usually in the upper left visual field, about the person like that he's speaking to, or the picture that like he's touching. And you know, these pictures, he touches these pictures face down. And you know, the information he reports spontaneously contains extremely detailed as well as general statements that exceed like a cold reading. So you know, pictures face down, and he can like sort of sense what the picture's about and the details surrounding the picture and like the context of the picture. Sort of like psychic sort of stuff.
Yeah, and they involved him in this double-blind study where they asked 3 different people to supply like 10 photographs, each of like single individuals of the family. So 10 photos of their family members. And he touched them face down, and he actually started generating and making, you know, narratives while holding these pictures face down. And then they were typed and given to the people who supplied them, and the people were just astonished. They read those narratives and they said that they were extremely accurate in relation to the people that they had known personally. So it wasn't generalized at all. The experimenters actually expected that he would get like 1 out of 10 right, because that's the statistically that's what you're able to get.
Yeah.
But the participants actually identified 6 to 8 of those narratives as the specific people. So specific to that individual. Yeah, that's
And they were
that's
face
crazy.
down.
Yeah. So statistically speaking, he couldn't have made them up or been too general, because they were looking for that specificity. If that's a word, specificity.
Now I'm once again conflicted.
There's been so many scams with horoscopes and stuff. We find it hard to believe that someone out there might actually have the ability.
Yeah,
Like
like
everyone's trying to scam us and tell us, you know, our future is bright, our future is doomed. Like it's so general.
Like even just reading it, like I still sort of don't kind of believe it. Like I'm just being honest, that's how I feel.
Yeah, even though it's in a clinical study.
I still don't believe it. Like
Me too. It's so ingrained for us not to believe those things.
Yeah. But you know, we have been talking a lot about like, you know, electromagnetic fields and stuff like that. But another thing that humans can't really detect is infrared sound. So infrared sound is very, very low and humans can't hear it. And so according to scientific studies, it shows that low frequency vibrations can actually cause discomfort. And an example of this is like certain traffic noises, you know, are known to annoy us or like cause disorientation.
Yeah, and that links us to Leventhal's psychological article on low frequency noise and annoyance. I love that title, low frequency noise and annoyance.
Yeah.
And he describes this kind of annoying noise as the hum.
It's kind of like those bugs in summer. I don't know if this is in other countries, but you know in Australia, those bugs in summer at night that are just like...
Yeah, we can actually hear them now.
Yeah.
Or is that the sun blazing? We can't tell. There's too much going on here.
Yeah.
And, you know, this hum can cause like feelings of panic, changes in heart rate and blood pressure. That's amazing.
Your blood pressure can change from a noise.
Yeah. Other studies like also showed links between infrasound and like bizarre sensations like getting chills down the spine or feeling uneasy.
Whoa. So you know how sometimes randomly you just shiver? It might just be like a low frequency sound.
Yeah,
that you can't detect.
Yeah, or the fact that your co-star wants the room to be 0 degrees.
I like the aircon, okay? We need to leave it on. I will sweat here, okay? So these feelings like chills down your spine, increased heart rate, feeling sort of panicked are very similar to what happens to you when you perceive something as paranormal. And you know, just to include another case study, in 1998, an engineer called Vic Tandy described working for a medical equipment manufacturer, and he kept on saying that there was this like certain lab had a haunted room, and whenever Vic Tandy worked in this lab, he felt like really depressed and he felt like extremely uncomfortable. And you know, occasionally he would see odd things, including this apparition that he said definitely looked like a ghost. However, we are talking about low frequency noise, and he eventually discovered that the room was home to a 19 hertz standing wave coming from a fan.
Wow. That would have been so anticlimactic and climatic at the same time.
Yeah, so it was this fan that was sending out inaudible vibrations that caused this like disorientation. A fan! First a clock, now a fan. Like, it's so weird how it's like the most basic object.
Yeah, he would have been so amazed and unamazed at the same time.
Yes. But that is so weird.
Yeah, you know what's even weirder?
What?
The idea of mold and
my
how
goodness.
that can make us feel things. I know when I read this, I was like, whoa, there's so much we don't know about.
Yeah.
So an engineering professor, Shane Rogers, who's actually really cool. Like when you hear engineering professor, you don't actually think like he's a real life Ghostbuster.
Yeah, pretty much.
What a cool job. He's been researching like the link between the presence of mold and the perception of seeing a ghost.
How do you even come up with the link to those two things?
Yeah, like can you imagine presenting your thesis? Hello everyone, today I would really like to know how mold makes us think about ghosts. Like how did you even come up with the idea?
Yeah, oh my goodness.
I mean, his job would be really hard because correlation does not really mean causation, and we know that. But anecdotally, I mean, he can't really prove causation, but he looked at a lot of anecdotes and he found that toxic molds exist in places that people thought were haunted.
Whoa. And just to let you know, the symptoms of being exposed to toxic mold are mood swings, hyperactivity, irrational anger, cognitive impairments,
Depression.
whoa,
That's a
memory
big one.
loss, anxiety, and fear. I think fear is like the biggest association I would say with the paranormal. And it's actually really interesting to note that this concept is not even that new. Because in 1995, Dr. R.J. Hay, one of England's leading mycologists, which is basically a fungus expert, which, what a cool title, like being a fungus
I
expert.
didn't even know these jobs existed. I should rethink about my future.
Yeah.
Not that I want to study fungus.
And the Dean of Dermatology at Guy's Hospital in London wrote about sick library syndrome. Do you know what that is?
I have an idea.
Yeah. So, Hay, the person who wrote about sick library syndrome, it's basically the idea that hallucinogenic spores in old books could lead to like the enhancement of enlightenment, aka old ass fungus makes you see things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny because when we think about old books, like automatically you open an old book and it has a certain smell to it.
Yes.
And you automatically feel smarter.
But wait a minute.
I'm a philosopher now. I read one sentence from this old book.
Yeah. Like in 1995 wasn't that long ago. Who's reading books with spores in them? I'm just saying. I'm sorry. But like, what is that?
It kind of links into the theory of carbon monoxide poisoning. In 1921, this doctor, his name is W.H. Wilmer, he published a story where a family claimed they were hearing like furniture moving and voices at night and like they felt ghosts and being held down in bed by ghosts.
Oh my god.
It turned out that it was this faulty furnace that was filling their house with carbon monoxide and it was causing these oral and visual hallucinations. And all these symptoms kind of stopped when the furnace was fixed. That shadow you see from the corner of your eye maybe has an explanation. We just don't know what it is.
But that's the thing, you mentioned this earlier. The scientific explanation is just as scary as the ghost. Like, there was like a carbon monoxide poisoning going on in their home.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, I'd rather have the ghost.
That's the thing, I don't know. They're both scary.
Yeah.
Which sort of leads us to the last like scientific or psychological explanation before we get into all the like spiritual stuff. This explanation, I'm pretty sure we all know what this is, confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Basically, if you believe in ghosts, you're more likely to perceive certain situations as paranormal. And so whether or not you perceive or believe something happened, it also links to, you know, the people around you. For example, someone else's account of an event might actually sway or influence your memory of that situation.
Yeah. It's like hearing a noise and you're probably thinking, oh, it's just, you know, a car outside, and then your friend says, did you hear that?
Yeah.
And suddenly it becomes like a demon in your bedroom.
Yeah. And actually did a study about this. In 2014, Goldsmiths University of London psychologists had participants watch a video of, you know, a psychic supposedly bending a metal key with their mind. And in one group, the subjects watched the video with a participant who was actually working with the researchers and professed to see the key bending. And but the key wasn't bending, and so those subjects were more likely to report that they also saw the key bending, as opposed to the other group who were paired with someone who asserted that the key didn't bend or said nothing at all.
Yeah, you know what? That reminds me of an experiment I was a participant in at uni. They showed us 2 lines and they paired us with people as well. And one of the lines was clearly shorter. Like
Yeah.
Obviously shorter, way shorter. And the other person was going, no, the line isn't shorter. They're exactly the same size. And you're sitting going, no, it's shorter. And then you're like, wait a minute, is it the same size? Like you start questioning your own mind.
Whoa.
It seems so ridiculous, but like a lot of people actually change their opinions and like, no, the lines are exactly the same. You're thinking, what? It's clearly shorter, people. It's shorter. But by the end of it, I was sitting there going, wait a minute, maybe they are the same.
Yeah, it does mess with you a bit.
Yeah.
And so those are sort of the scientific explanations. That was like sort of the wrap up of like scientific explanations behind ghosts. And now we're gonna get into the spooky stuff.
Yeah, we're going to get into like the most widely held belief about the nature of ghosts.
Yeah.
And that is that they are either spirits or dead people.
Spirits of dead people.
I know. You know, it doesn't have to be.
You said they are either spirits or dead. Spirits of dead people. I see dead people.
The idea that even after a person passes away, their spirit stays here on earth with us. Especially if they have unfinished business. Like, that sounds like a line out of a movie. Like,
yeah.
They've come back for unfinished business.
Yeah. It's sort of odd because in this theory, it's science explaining a cultural belief.
Yeah, like, where's the line? Where's the line? There is no line.
It's sort of weird. Okay, so this sort of brings in the law of conservation of energy. We all know that energy can't be created or destroyed, or like matter can't be created or destroyed, but can only like, you know, change form. What happens to our energy after we're dead? Is it converted into another form? Do we go from human to ghost? So this raises a lot of questions. Do spirits exist on Earth forever, or do we simply move on to another dimension?
When we discuss these things or think about these things, we're kind of thinking about parallel universes, aren't we?
Yeah.
The notion that time is not parallel and every time period is existing simultaneously.
This is my favorite theory and I am very passionate about it.
Yeah, she is. She talks about this day and night.
I really do.
I lose a pen and she's like, it's in a parallel universe. It's like, no, it's under the table.
Yeah, but it's sort of like what you mentioned. It's this idea that rather than just one reality or physical universe as we know it, we're sort of in a multiverse. And it's sort of this idea that the inhabitants of these parallel dimensions may bleed over into our dimension.
Yeah.
So the best like metaphorical like imagery, whatever you want to call it, that sort of explains this. It's like this veil that separates us from one timeline to another timeline. And sometimes this veil, like, you know, breaks and these time periods or events cross over in a way. And, you know, you may be experiencing something quote unquote paranormal, but really you are just witnessing another time period.
Yeah, and a lot of movies do that.
Yeah.
Like they play with this idea of parallel universes.
Yeah, and one of my favorite movies, I think it's Insidious. You don't need to know the plot or anything, but I think this scene sort of encapsulates like this idea, I guess, or what I'm trying to say. So there's this scene earlier in the movie where the main character hears a knock on the door, but when he opens the door, there is no one there, and he's like really confused, like, why did I hear this loud? Like, it was a banging.
Yeah.
But it is later revealed in the movie that it was his future self that was banging on the door, trying to get in, running away from something. And his past self was the one that opened the door. Yeah. So it's simultaneously the future, the past, and the present existing all at once. It's so confusing.
It's so confusing, but I mean, time is amazing. I mean, what is time?
What is time?
What is time? And like, where does yesterday go?
Okay, you just blew my mind. Where does it go? Time is still this endless, yet limitless, yet limiting thing.
Yes.
Do you get what I mean? Like, time feels like it's forever, yet in the present it feels really limited. It's so hard to explain.
And then when it's in the past, it no longer exists. Like, it's this thing that exists that continues to exist and then stops existing.
You will never experience yesterday ever again.
Unless you have a video camera.
No, even then you can't experience it again.
Yeah, like even when we think about yesterday, it's only the memory of yesterday. It's not the experience itself. Yeah. I don't know. Are we going crazy? Like,
yes,
what's happening?
I'm actually losing my mind.
Let's move on.
Back to the parallel universes. It sort of links to this other idea of residual hauntings, and basically what that is, it's this playback of a past event. And so the apparitions involved, or like, you know, the ghosts you see, are not spirits, rather, you know, recordings of the past playing itself over.
So essentially these types of ghosts like don't interact with us or seem to be aware of the living, which means that this theory doesn't account for like the ghostly interactions and those kind of stories, which is odd. But their appearance and actions are always the same. They are like spirit level recordings that we play over and over again.
For example, a Civil War soldier like is seen on repeated occasions staring out of a window of a house, or, you know, a dead child's laughter is heard echoing in a hallway where they often play like over and over again. And there are even cases of like ghost cars and trains, which I don't even understand how that works.
Yeah.
How does that work? How is a ghost car and train? What? How does that make sense? Like, I get if it's like a human being, but how can an object be a ghost?
Watched a video of, you know, this place where they kept hearing like a train go past, but there were no tracks there. And they did a little research, and in the past there was actually a train track where they live.
Well, so maybe that's the residual haunting. It's sort of like this imprint of the past that stays.
With that being said, I don't know if they wanted more tourists or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, let's just put that out there. But, you know, that's interesting to think about, because like there's a lot of stories of people who've lost a child, like hearing their laughter in the same spot, like in their room over and over again. I don't know if that's your memory glitching because of the pain and grief, or
a residual haunting.
Yeah. Like a part of me is going, oh no, that can't be happening. But even if, like, just thinking about memory being able to do that, being able to induce that feeling that your child is actually there laughing in that moment is amazing within itself.
Yeah.
Well, so just even the explanation, I think.
Yeah, ghost science or not, the idea that that can even happen.
Yeah.
Or you envision that happening. Because let's be honest, people experiencing these things, not all of them are lying. Some people do feel these things. Like what I mentioned earlier about like the clock and stuff like that, or like imagining like a baby over your shoulder. Usually when you hear those stories, you're like, oh, this is fake. But then we find out there's an explanation and it blows your mind. Which sort of leads us to sort of paranormal research, and there are paranormal researchers. And this is a really widely held belief by people who research the paranormal. It's this idea of psychokinetic energy.
For us normal people, it's kind of the idea that if you are open to spirits, they are more willing to interact with you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all kind of hear about this. You know?
And it's kind of your mind reaching out to form a connection.
But yeah, you do hear a lot of people, especially like palm readers or something, like, oh, if you believe in it, or like open up to me a bit more, I can get a bit more information. Which kind of sounds scary now that I say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if you play like with a Ouija board, and you like open up like a realm and like demons can enter because you opened up this realm. It's sort of that idea, but like mentally. And this sort of ghost activity is typically not confined to, you know, a specific location, as it is typically tethered to a person or persons. It could be a possible explanation as to why like some families say that, you know, this ghost has been following me around, or like following my family around from like house to house to house.
Yeah, that these hauntings actually move with these families.
I know this is like a side note, but like as an audience member, you can think about this as well. If you had someone in your family pass away and they came back as a ghost or whatnot, would you be scared? Would you be welcoming? How do you deal with that situation? Assuming that ghosts are real. Just put yourself in that position where you think ghosts are real.
Yeah, like you've just lost a loved one and they come back to you in ghost form. Would you reject them?
I think I would be scared, actually. I don't know if I would be welcoming.
I'd be so scared.
That's really interesting to think about.
Sometimes when we wish for things or we want something really badly, we kind of imagine them.
This got sad.
Yeah. So if you never get past the denial stage, then
you might lose your mind.
Yeah.
Because you do need to accept at one point, as harsh as that sounds.
It makes it seem like we're trying to tell people not to believe in ghosts. That it's just part of our imagination, but that's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
that's just one possible explanation. The name ghost is what we humans have constructed over time, but
we have sort of like a Hollywood perception to it. Do you know what I mean?
Like of this green blob or this see-through hologramic thing, but like we don't know what's out there.
There are some fish in the oceans that we don't even know how they look like.
They're physical entities.
And we don't know what they are.
We don't know what kind of fish they are.
So imagine on a like non-physical level what we don't know.
Okay, this is just getting way too deep.
And there's another theory that sort of goes against everything we've been talking about. And it's this idea that there is no such thing as ghosts, but not from a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
There's a catch. Okay. So strip away that feeling of comfort, you know, oh, like this ghost is like my dead grandfather. No. There's a theory that says that ghosts are actually demons or angels manifesting in a manner understandable to humans. I'm scared.
So angels and demons, not like what we see in Charmed or Hollywood,
yeah.
But angels and demons taking form in ways that are familiar to us, like human beings. I think it's similar to the concept of saying, oh, my grandfather who has passed away is a guardian angel. You know, we don't say my grandfather is a ghost. A lot of people kind of believe that their dead loved ones watch over them.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you don't, sometimes in hard times, like I'm not sure if people have experienced this, but I'm not sure everyone has experienced this.
Yeah.
But, you know, even in hard times, like a lot of people secretly speak to their mother or father or a friend as a sort of comfort.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that sometimes. Like, in hard times, I kind of go, oh, Grandma, help me.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if you're not spiritual or stuff like that, when someone passes, you do have the idea like, oh, I want to make them proud. So you do have this sense of they're still here.
Yeah,
you get what I mean? Looking over me.
Yeah. Yeah, like even when you have a major achievement, it's like, oh, you know, Mum would have been so proud.
Yeah.
Like there's this notion that they can still experience the things you're experiencing, which if you think about it, is a little bit odd because I do a lot of things I don't want my grandma to know about.
Same. I'm getting triggered.
Yeah.
I hope my grandma is really not watching over me. She'll be so pressed.
Oh, we have the other extreme.
I don't want to talk about this other extreme. Can we please stop here? I don't even want to mention this because I'm scared. The ghosts, you know, that you see wandering around your house, I said that so casually, like everyone has seen a ghost, may actually be a demon masquerading as a human in order to gain your confidence so they can take your soul.
This is so messed up.
There's also this belief that demons are particularly good at masquerading as other children so they can become friends with your kids. That gives like a whole new meaning to like little demon. I would say like 50% of kids have like imaginary friends. What if they're a demon?
I know.
And it's sort of an offshoot of this idea that, you know, demonic spirits are able to control human apparitions and make them do all sort of kind of things. Like
horrible things.
Yeah, like they take your soul and they possess you.
Just thinking about demons holding like spirits, human spirits in the world, like just to gain power from them. That's just so evil. Like even preventing them from passing on to the next realm or whatever it is. And explains like a lot about the state of the world. Like maybe it's not evil people. Maybe they are actually demons.
So if you see anyone you hate in the media, just say they're possessed by demons or they're a reptile. Like, it's really not that deep.
Yeah. Like, out of everything we've mentioned, that's the scariest. Like, to have demons, because ghosts, yeah, they're creepy, but they're not usually associated with
Evil.
I say that, babe. We're nearly at the end of our podcast, and I can't believe we chose to end it on this note.
I'm scared. I don't want to...
Like, everything is demonic? What? That's our conclusion?
Pretty much, I guess. I actually have a question. I have a question for you and for the audience. Please let us know, have you ever experienced something paranormal?
Oh, definitely.
Really?
Yes, definitely. You were with me. Remember you came over my house once and the can of... It wasn't Coke. It was lemonade.
It's odd flesh, but okay.
Schweppes lemonade. Remember when it moved?
I think it was the magnetic field, now that you say that.
Yeah, maybe there was something wrong with my house. It was like a new house, so...
Yeah. And didn't you say you heard footsteps? Do you want to mention that one?
Yes, we moved to this new house and it wasn't like an old house, like your typical haunted kind of house.
Yeah.
But every single night we heard footsteps. It's just so creepy. We literally heard footsteps in our hallway.
It might not have been the ghost. It might have been your future self walking around.
Whoa. We joked about it being a ghost, but something inside me kind of went, oh, there's something moving in the structure of the house, which is far more scary.
Yeah. Like there's someone living in the roof of your house. Like, oh, he's fine. Leave him there. Like,
oh, little animal.
Unfortunately, I wish I had a story. Like, I wish I need to go get myself a story.
Yeah, I don't even think my story is credible. It just seems paranormal, even though deep down I know it was probably something else.
Yeah. So please let us know if you experienced something paranormal, or even if you thought you experienced something paranormal that could be easily explained,
Yeah.
but like it just felt paranormal. Moral of this podcast, just be terrified, because both science and non-scientific explanations are both just as scary, so just be terrified.
Yeah.
I hope someone listens to this at night. I hope you're listening to this at night.
And like from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
And then you feel like a baby on your shoulder.
Yeah. Oh, whoa.
No, we're not trying to instill fear in you. All we want to say is that we see dead people.
So that's the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for watching. This is me, Zara, dishwashing liquid or whatever, signing off.
And this is Nora, also signing off.
I see dead people. I see alive people that haven't clicked the subscribe button.